This is Matthew McConaughey.
Natalie Portman.
James Patterson.
Michael Ian Black.
And you are listening to
Five Questions
with Dan
Schawbel.
Carla, welcome to Five Questions.
Well, thank you for having me, Dan.
To start off, what were the biggest obstacles you faced as an African-American female trying to break the glass ceiling at a major financial firm?
Yeah, I'll tell you, Dan, the big deal was that I didn't know the rules of the game and I didn't have a playbook. I walked in believing and embracing the concept of a meritocracy because, frankly, every firm that came to interview or recruit at Harvard Business School sold a meritocracy. But it didn't take me long before I realized that being smart and working hard were not enough. There were other things that informed your success equation that really made all the difference. But I'll tell you one in particular. With respect to any glass ceiling, and I don't really believe in the concept of a glass ceiling, but I do respect it and understand why people say it. But one of the most important pearls that I learned is that you don't ask, you don't get, which I write about in my first book, Expect to Win. In the 6th chapter, there's one person that has responsibility for your career, and that's you. And so often, women and people of color in particular sort of wait for somebody to tap them on the shoulder, and you must ask for the order, especially when you are asking for a leadership position, more power and authority. You make sure that the organization knows that it is your aspiration and intention to lead.
I think that's a beautiful and smart answer, especially because I reflected my career and really it came down to persistence. No, I don't want to say I'm not smart or creative or have these other qualities, but, just following up again and again. And it's not that I'm not taking no for an answer because maybe I'm not qualified or it's not the right time right now. But that doesn't mean I won't send another email or make a call or have a meeting in 6 months, a year. Like sometimes even for guests on this podcast, but a lot of people might not know because I love booking my own guests. I've done it for 15 years is, sometimes some of these interviews take 8 years.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that, if it's something you really want, if you believe in yourself, maybe you're not qualified and maybe it's not the right time now, but, just keep building up, advancing, like a lot of the stuff you talk about, advancing your skills. And then when it's the right time, ask and ask again. You have nothing to lose. And I think that, and you probably agree, I think that a lot of people are their own worst enemy in this respect.
That's exactly right. And it's not even about, as you said, it's not even about taking no for an answer as much as it is key and important to ask the question why and why not, because you're going to hear no a lot. And what I have found is if you push on that no a little bit, then you start to open up a conversation, because sometimes people don't have a good reason for telling you no. They just tell you no because they think they can, or they tell you no because they think you'll accept it. But when you say why not, then you provoke an answer. And if you don't get an answer, then you know that there's nothing there. And then you kind of go a little deeper and start asking questions as to what the issue, because if it's not about your skills, it's not about your experience, your tool chest, your portfolio of things that you've done, then now let's get to the meat of the question.
I love asking questions. In fact, I feel like I'm the chief question officer because, I do big research studies on the future work. I do these podcasts. I do so many things, but really it's just all about asking questions. And especially when it comes to your career, like you say, you're not going to have the answers, especially to everything that you want and know to get ahead. So you have to ask those questions. And we have like this very fascinating work paradigm right now that over the past few years, especially during COVID, where there's remote workers and there's uncertainty and some people are doing hybrid and like, a lot of the leadership position, qualities are still important that were always important. But I think that, now managing a career in this environment is different and it has created a lot of fear. So how do you successfully navigate these new challenges and opportunities for the way we're working now?
Yes, I'll tell you that I think it's an extraordinary opportunity, whether you're building your career or whether you're a leader, because for the first time in our lifetime, Dan, we have a blank sheet of paper, which means nobody really has the playbook. You get an opportunity to construct, to develop, and really keying into what matters to the people that are working with you and not just following the script of what you think you need to do as a leader. Now you get to sit back and say, okay, it's different for all of us. Let me find out what you need. What is the environment that would really make you inspired to come and give your all and beyond even what you thought you could do? Let's talk about what that looks like. What kind of support would you need from me as a leader? What kind of guidance would you need from me as a leader? When would you want me to leave you alone? Go get the information, engage in the conversation. It is valuable because when you now deliver that as a leader, you amplify the message. I'm listening. You matter. I appreciate your contributions. All of that will pay a handsome yield on your engagement with the people who are working with you.
And a lot of the conversations I've had now with leaders are about just asking how people are. Like I feel like we've come to a point because work and life are so like interrelated and a lot of people are working from home. So like, maybe their spouse is like 6 feet away from them or their kids walk in or whatever, people have a window to people's life in a way they didn't working in a physical office. I feel like the importance of being an empathetic leader is really important, understanding what people are going through. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I think empathy has always been a key ingredient to outstanding leadership, but we didn't call it that. We didn't speak about that openly. We were just starting to talk about vulnerability. If you think about it, Dan, in 18 and 19, people were just starting to talk about the concept of vulnerability. And what's fascinating to me is these things have always been a part of our human experience, but think about the energy that it took to hide that. Think about the energy that it took not to mention it when it was eating you up, coming through your pores, but you had to suck it down, especially if you were leading a group of people or if you were trying to aspire up the ladder in an organization. These things are now integrated, I think, in a much more productive and constructive way because of the experience we've all gone through.
Yeah, I feel like Maslow's hierarchy of needs is like right front and center in a way in which it probably wasn't like 3-4 years ago. Safety, security, relationships at work, like all these things are so much more prioritized now because a lot of people have suffered. A lot of people have all these challenges and you can't really escape them. And so I think that, people bring their, issues and work home with them because a lot of people are working from home.
That's exactly right.
And so on a daily basis, what are your recommendations for people who are looking to get ahead at work?
Yes, if you're looking to get ahead at work, some of the pearls that I talk about in my first two books, Expect to Win and Strategize to Win, are really understanding what the key success factors are in your environment and making sure that you are seen through that lens. And that's chapter 4 of Expect to Win, Dan. Perception is the co-pilot to reality. How people perceive you will directly impact how they deal with you. So being aware of the perception and more importantly, understanding that you have the power to drive people's perceptions about you, but you need to know what success looks like and what those 3 adjectives are. The second thing that I would tell anybody is your authenticity is your distinct competitive advantage. And interestingly enough, your authenticity is a hallmark of being a powerful leader as well. So understanding who you are and what facet of you will authentically connect with your audience, whether it's a coworker, whether it's your boss, whether it's 1,000 people that you're talking to in a conference room or in an auditorium at your office. So understanding that that's your distinct edge. And then the third thing is being comfortable taking risks, because in the environment that we're in now, innovation is the dominant competitive parameter. So therefore, you have to be comfortable going into unknown territory, and you have to be comfortable that you're going to have to take the risks in order to innovate. Because if you don't hit the wall, you haven't gone by definition as far as you can go. So you need to continue to iterate and take those risks until you hit the wall, find the point that you're at now and what needs to go to market, and then figure out how to push that wall down again to go to point 2 or 2.0 or 3.0 of whatever that product or process is. So those are sort of 3 of the key things that I think you need to have front and center now as you're trying to head up the ladder. And if you're a leader, it really is around the authenticity. It's around the building trust. It's around creating clarity, and also making sure that you're intentional around diverse workforces, because that's how you get the best idea. That's how you can have confidence when you go to market with a product or a process that you have no gaps, because you had all voices at the table when you were creating the thing.
Yeah, I think the voice of employee has become more important, especially with all this decentralization of the workforce. Yeah. And I agree with your whole premise and a lot of what you talk about in your To Win series is collect data. Sometimes it's qualitative data, conversations, like you were saying earlier, to ask questions, to get information. But sometimes it's also collecting data in terms of, what you're seeing in your work environment, what people are talking about, to just kind of make better decisions about how you operate in that environment. Because organizational behavior, I think, is really critical. And psychology, understanding what people want and need so you can deliver to them, kind of goes back to what we were saying with empathy, is figure out what people need, and then you can actually help them with that.
Absolutely.
Everyone has to be a problem solver because business is about solving problems.
Absolutely. And one of the things I talk about in my new book, Lead to Win, is that being a listener is probably one of the most important things you can do as a leader, period, full stop. And most companies and organizations, Dan, don't even realize the treasure chest of talent that they're sitting on. I hire you, Dan, for one job, and I never look at your resume again. So now when a new opportunity, a new role comes up, if I'm not seeing you through the lens of that thing that I think I want in this, or that profile that I think I want in this new role, I never even think about Dan. I go out and I hire an executive recruiter to get me that, when in fact, you could have had other experiences within your organization before you got to my organization that suggests that you're the right person for the new thing. So one of the things that I've been saying to leaders, and that I hint on in the book, is that leaders need to take inventory of the skills and experiences that exist within their organization. Because chances are you already have that talent. You don't have to go out and buy that talent.
Yeah, I'm huge into internal mobility and opportunity and the skills economy. I think everything is really based on skills now, and placement. What's really interesting is you must be having an impact, because my friends, what they're saying is when they're applying for jobs, especially at technology companies and more modern companies, what they're doing is they're interviewing for this job, and there might not be a job available, but they're looking at this individual across the board and saying, oh, well, maybe they could fit in this department or that department. So it's not as much about placing for a specific job anymore. It's about, getting the talent, the right talent, the people who are qualified overall in terms of, the ability to solve problems, all the things that you talk about in your books. And then when it makes sense, to try and place that person in that role. So it's things are becoming more strategic, I feel.
That is a smart move for any employer to do that, is to go for the good athlete, because you don't have a crystal ball in the environment that we're in now. So you can't even anticipate what your needs might be a year from now, and you may no longer have access to that candidate. Now, if you purchase the strong athlete, you must invest enough to engage in their intellectual development until you figure out the right seat.
I love that. That makes so much sense. And what's your best piece of career advice?
Best piece of career advice is to leverage and value relationships. I'm a big fan of making sure you have the skills and you can put the points on the board. But Dan, at the end of the day, you cannot maximize your success in any seat, going up the ladder or as a leader, without relationships. That relationship capital is key.
Talent, timing, and relationships. I totally agree. And, I think relationships in general are the foundation. It's, a big part of why we're even talking today, right? And I think that, the ability to establish relationships is something that's always going to be important. And especially at your level in your career, a lot of those relationships lead to the opportunities, because it becomes more complicated to apply for jobs at the executive level. That's why those executive staffing firms exist. So it's really comes down to who you know at that level. You, of course, being on boards and all the things that you do, people have known you for such a long time. So it's easier to be like, oh, I trust, you, Carla, and I want to have her on my board. Mm-hmm. Right. And you would do the same for other people. So I think that that's what ends up happening. And that's why having a long career can be really valuable, because all that hard work, for instance, you, Carla, had put in for your career, that ends up paying off, because you kind of grow up with the people who are also in power positions that help you navigate this next chapter in your career, which is exciting.
That's absolutely right. You hit it right on the head, Dan.
Well, I appreciate it. And thank you so much for the advice and for being on the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me.